I don't really tackle a lot of heavy-duty shit, mostly because whenever I do, something goes wrong. I know that makes me sound like a coward for going after some smaller fish, but really all it is just me picking my battles. But after a while, I gotta challenge myself, so today I'm gonna go for the big fish in the lake, that being James Alsop. If you're wondering who he is, I'll explain. James Alsop is an alt-right YouTuber who does podcasts and interviews and shit with his Nazi buddies about Nazi stuff. He's pretty much a more racist version of Steven Crowder. He made a video about the recent late-term abortion bill in Virginia. If you can't tell already, it has a lot to do with New York doing the same thing. It's about as bad as you might imagine. So with all that out of the way, let's get this show on the road.
Last week, many Americans were horrified when they heard testimony from lawmakers in Virginia and New York about proposed changes to each state's abortion law.
Horrifying sexist old white man is kind of the idea here, pal.
Was passed to the applause of feminists and the far left. The New York law allows for abortion up to the point of birth if a doctor is willing to suggest that having the child poses a risk to the woman's emotional health.
You clearly have the statute where it says it includes emotional health. Not just emotional health on premise, meaning if the woman will likely die during labor, the abortion can be carried out. If you're gonna bullshit your audience, do a better fucking job at it.
If giving birth to her child might make a woman sad because she would have to miss out on Franzia and Xanax night with the girls, she can now kill her perfectly healthy child in utero.
Yes, because men have never skimped out on parenthood to avoid the massive responsibilities that come with it. Also, that's not what they mean by emotional health, fucktard. Childbirth can and oftentimes leads to postpartum depression, which in turn leaves women susceptible to suicide and self-harm. If you really think a mother having her life at risk in a situation where she can end up killing herself, which would leave the baby orphans or motherless anyway, is a better alternative than just terminating a pregnancy altogether, then you're a selfish asshole who's proving that men shouldn't interject on issues of abortion.
In Virginia, a lawmaker named Kathy Tran proposed a bill that would allow infants to be killed as they are being born during the birth process known as dilation. Virginia's Governor Ralph Northam went a step further, suggesting that abortion could take place after the baby is born. In his own words, quote, "The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated, if that's what the mother and the family desired, and then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother." End quote. Ah, yes, Ralph, a discussion as the newly born infant lays there crying for its mother. A discussion about the best way to kill him or her.
Okay, unsurprisingly enough, you don't know what you're talking about. Firstly, dilation is also a process that happens during miscarriages, aka when the fetus is already dead. What it does at that point is clear out the uterus of the miscarried fetus to avoid a uterine infection. As far as what Ralph Northam said, well, I can't exactly verify what he meant, but what I do know is that he never said he would execute living babies. It is safe to assume, however, he was also in reference of miscarriages. The idea that late-term abortions are just chucking live babies out of windows like they're clay pigeons is a huge lie that needs to fucking end.
Sucking out his brains with a vacuum, killing him with lethal injection, then ripping off his limbs one by one. You may think I'm being overly graphic or exaggerating, but I'm not. Those are two of the ways infants are routinely aborted in the United States. This video is going to get directly to the point. I'm going to describe to you exactly, in precise medical detail, each of these abortion procedures, and we'll talk about the dubious historical ways they became legal in the United States. At the end, we'll talk about how broken and backwards our country has become, as evidenced by the phenomenon where those that defend literal infanticide, the murder of children, are treated as respectable political voices, and those that condemn them are marginalized and attacked by the powers that be.
You're not marginalized. You're just being rightly criticized for being clueless idiots, especially when you don't even know what infanticide actually is.
Green is not a creative color.
Boom. 2 states ban abortion throughout the entire third trimester, and 24 states ban abortion after a certain number of weeks. 17 of those 24 ban abortion after the 22-week mark because that is where the baby can feel pain. Now, I know those numbers may seem abstract. It's probably hard to relate to these numbers if you don't have a frame of reference. 20 weeks, 22 weeks, 40 weeks, what does it all mean? I know that I really had no idea about stages of pregnancy until experiencing it firsthand with my own wife and child. Let me tell you, development in the womb happens a lot faster than you would expect. I first felt kicking before the 3rd trimester, at 20 weeks, and in most states, at that point, abortion would probably still be an option on the table. Until this recent controversy over late-term abortion, I wasn't aware of exactly how abortion was conducted. Unlike many conservatives or those on the right, I never went through the intense pro-life phase, where you consume all the information you can find about abortion and abortion procedures. Until recently, pro-life politics haven't mattered very much to me.
I can only assume it's because you realized you weren't sexist enough. Also, there's no such thing as pro-life. If you were pro-life, you'd be advocating adoption for the thousands of kids in foster care who get ignored daily. You'd be helping out starving homeless children. You'd be actually doing something productive with your time. You're not only anti-woman, but pro-lifers are actually pro-birth. You don't care what happens to the kid once it's born. You just want to control women.
They do now. I had a vague notion, like they have to get the baby out of there somehow, right? But I had no idea how ghoulish and depraved the process actually is. This is what's being celebrated as heroic and brave by many on the left. Let's take a look. From approximately 17 weeks to 24 weeks gestation, abortion is legal in most states for any reason. No medical or health justification necessary. In the 17 states that prohibit abortion after fetal viability, there is no objective standard for viability. It all depends on a doctor's opinion. And just like with prescription drugs and medical marijuana, some doctors are willing to interpret fetal viability in whatever way the patient wants.
Yeah, that's kind of the point behind a woman's right to choose. They don't need to justify their choice to get an abortion because of medical reasons. They can get one because they're either pregnant through rape, there was a contraceptive accident, or they're simply not ready to be a mother yet. Do you not understand how choices work? Oh, who am I kidding? If you did, we wouldn't be here right now.
Keep in mind that at 24 weeks, fetal viability is anywhere from 50 to 70%, and at 26 weeks, that number jumps to 90%. Knowing that, let's look at how abortion doctors go about conducting abortions after the 17-week mark. These are the abortions that commonly take place after the 17-week mark up until the end of the 3rd trimester when the baby is fully formed. This process is known as dilation and extraction. When describing abortion procedures, I will be reading directly from abortionprocedures.com. Quote, a dilation and evacuation abortion, D&D, is a surgical abortion procedure during which an abortionist first dilates the woman's cervix and then uses instruments to dismember and extract the baby from the uterus. The D&D abortion procedure is usually performed between 13 and 24 weeks LMP, that is, 13 to 24 weeks after the first day of the woman's last menstrual period. To prepare for a D&E abortion, the abortionist uses laminaria, a form of sterilized seaweed, to open the woman's cervix 24 to 48 hours before the procedure. The laminaria soaks up liquid from the woman's body and expands, widening, i.e. dilating, the cervix. When the woman returns to the abortion clinic, the abortionist may administer anesthesia and further open the cervix using metal dilators and a speculum. The abortionist inserts a large suction catheter into the uterus and turns it on, emptying the amniotic fluid. After the amniotic fluid is removed, the abortionist uses a Sofer clamp, a grasping instrument with sharp rows of teeth, to grasp and pull the baby's arms and legs, tearing the limbs from the child's body. The abortionist continues to grab intestines, spine, heart, lungs, and any other limbs or body parts. The most difficult part of the procedure is usually finding, grasping, and crushing the baby's head. After removing pieces of the child's skull, the abortionist uses a curette to scrape the uterus and remove the placenta and any remaining parts of the baby. The abortionist then collects all of the baby's parts and reassembles them to make sure there are 2 arms, 2 legs, and that all of the pieces have been removed. End quote.
I guess her body, her choice, has a nicer ring than crushed skulls and dismembered baby limbs. This procedure commonly takes place after week 20, the threshold where the infant's nervous system is developed enough to feel pain. In many states, women that claim to have mental health issues can have their perfectly healthy and viable infants chopped up in the womb to protect their supposed mental health.
I mean, not to sound ableist here, but mentally ill parents typically don't have the best means to support their children. But as I've said before, you're pro-birth, so you don't actually give a fuck about what happens to the kid in that home, whether it's a healthy environment or not. At least some filthy female didn't have the option to not be a parent. Just die for the sake of humanity.
This is just a technical description of how the process works. It's up to you to decide whether or not you believe this should be a constitutionally protected right for women. Dilation and extraction is an option for women in every state in the US that would like to experience having their perfectly healthy child's severed limbs pulled out of them one by one. The second abortion process we're going to talk about today is known as induction. Remember, the abortion of viable babies, those over a certain week limit and those in the 3rd trimester, is illegal in 43 states, with some exceptions. Alaska, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, D.C., Vermont, New Hampshire, New Jersey, and New Mexico all allow abortion until the end of the 3rd trimester under any circumstances.
I think it's also worth noting that most 3rd trimester abortions happen because there's a medical emergency. Most women who get them don't just wake up one Tuesday morning and say, alright, let's kill a little faggot, lol. They've already picked out clothes, names, gotten a room ready, all of that. The reason they had to opt out so late is because of medical issues, like either the baby's dying or the woman will. Late-term abortions only account for 5% of all abortions. It's not a widespread problem that idiots like you want to convince people.
To understand how induction came about, we need to rewind the clock to 2007. In 2007, a piece of legislation known as the Partial Birth Abortion Act was upheld by the Supreme Court. The partial birth abortion ban prohibited, as you may guess, partial birth abortion. Legally, that is defined as delivering a live baby until the head has exited the mother's body and then killing that live baby. Perhaps the infanticide ban would have been a more apt title.
You see, in those cases, the baby is dying and can't be saved. And since it's grown at 27 weeks, it can't be dilated and evacuated, making injecting the baby with a toxin and delivering it stillborn the more viable option, although more difficult. This might seem like I'm stretching, but the fact is, abortion is an incredibly complicated thing, and for people like James to paint all women who get abortions as bloodthirsty serial killers is a huge disinformation of the facts.
With a process this involved, one might assume there would be a 100% success rate. One would be wrong. Even with induction and lethal injection, there is still a risk the baby could survive. Again, this process is illegal, without restriction in 7 US states. These are states that have laws regulating how loud your car's muffler can be, regulating your vehicle's O2 emissions. But this process, dilation, extraction, induction, lethal injection, all of that is A-okay.
And executing criminals is still legal in some states, despite the fact that some death row inmates were actually innocent. Does that mean we should ban the death penalty? Trains can derail. Does that mean we should ban trains? Just because something has a chance of failure doesn't mean it doesn't work, especially when you don't consider that the success rate is higher than the fail rate.
Okay. And in Virginia and New York, they are attempting to go even further. The pro-choice movement is pushing beyond abortion in the womb. They are now demanding the ability to execute infants after their birth.
Didn't you say that already? Do I have to debunk that point twice? Will you never learn?
At some point, we have to acknowledge basic realities. When did it become controversial to see the killing of live, healthy babies as pure, unadulterated evil?
Mighty rich coming from a guy who's totally fine with the killings of unarmed black people at the hands of cops and tear gassing a bunch of Central American children at the border, and by extension all of the kids in Trump's internment camps. I'm sick of you right-wing faggots pretending to care about the well-being of children when it comes to women making choices about their body and life while being blissfully ignorant of your own hypocrisy. Just shut the fuck up!
How did we get to the point where activists that support the actual murder of infants are seen as respectable defenders of women's rights, and those of us that oppose them are oppressive, bigoted patriarchs? In America, you will be punished economically and socially if the media accuses you of being a racist. But if you openly advocate the killing of infants, you're a feminist and a hero.
Projection of the highest order.
In the first trimester, although I would still contend that access to abortion diminishes the link between sex and having children, causing men and women to make irresponsible decisions and delay starting families, which contributes to falling Western birth rates and the increase of consumerism, etc.
I thought you were a capitalist. Suddenly you're concerned about consumerism being an issue? Also, nice job with the subtle racism about Western civilization collapsing. You're not slick. And having sex isn't just about starting a family. Sex is a way to show that a couple has trust in each other. Enjoying sex isn't a bad thing, and it doesn't make you a degenerate or whatever, you prudish fuck.
There is, as I see it though, no excuse for the abortion of viable, healthy children, especially in the second or third trimester. The people that defend infanticide and those that engage in it should be treated as defenders and participants in acts of murder. Any doctor that participates in the killing of a live infant should be punished accordingly by society as a murderer. They should face, in some way or another, and by any means necessary, the same severe punishment anyone else would face for the cold-blooded murder of an infant, with due process, of course. Evil must be named and confronted as such, and the ghouls on the left celebrating the murder of infants should no longer be welcome in any polite society.
God, why hasn't anyone punched you yet? So that's the end of the video. Holy fucking shit, was this a chore to sit through. I'm just gonna be straight here. This video is propaganda in no uncertain terms. It's no accident that he spent most of this video's runtime describing abortion processes in supposed horrific detail to make it sound like any woman who's had an abortion is a demon straight from the deepest pit of hell. Abortions won't go away. All any attempt to erase them would do is diminish access to safe abortions. And like I said before, pro-life is just pro-birth. They don't give a solitary fuck about the lives of children. It's about hating and controlling women. No more, no less. I have zero advice for this waste of life. These kinds of people are lost causes. James, do the entire world a favor and take a nap on a highway. Hopefully I've dispelled plenty of myths about abortion. Thanks for watching. This is the Nihilistic Snake slithering out of here. Greetings, this is the Nihilistic Snake, and I'm ready for action. Today I'm doing something interesting, commentating on what appears to be a Gamergate video. For anyone who wouldn't be able to tell already, I fucking hate Gamergate. I think almost everyone involved in this so-called movement is an entitled, self-important asshole who can't handle that just maybe, the gaming industry might be fucked in some areas.